There are many conventions of short films that can be dissected to represent a typical one, and as a production team we utilise some of these. Common short films used a very small cast list, usually consisting of as little as 1 or 2 characters. Being short films don't have time to tell a story of many characters, and if it tried to, it could become monotonous. This is an idea we considered in our film, and it focuses on one main character. Wilson's character made our story what it is, and as the convention suggests, this made sense within the time we had. However, to avoid a colourless narrative, most short films include a twist. Short films nearly always contain a twist, and for this reason, twisting the story is to make them more interesting for the audience. Within Finders Keepers, a plot twist strikes at the very end, leaving the viewer with an uncertainty for the main character's future. After watching other short films during the research stage of pre-production, we really liked the twist idea, and it was something we had in mind from the beginning. Our short films aren't meant to be the feature films where everything makes perfect mainstream sense. It's okay to leave some room for thought. Typically, short films are between 5 and 10 minutes long, and this is another aspect we adopted. Our film is just short of 8 minutes and therefore sits neatly into the short film category. Due to the fact that most short films directors are independent without sufficient backing in terms of funding, the budget tends to be small, especially in comparison to feature-length films. This stands to worry, as we are a small independent company with little budget. With this in mind, we used the area and props around us to make the most of what we had. The codes and conventions of film as a whole include editing, mise-en-scène, mise-en-shot, sound, dialogue, locations, use of actors and narrative structures. Certain aspects of these apply to short films, however, a few go against what is preferred for a shorter duration. For example, a feature film would use lots of character voices, but within short films it is commonplace to have very little dialogue as it saves it becoming cheesy. A voiceover is often used to fill in gaps instead. For Finders Keepers, dialogue wasn't necessary, however sound effects of whispers are needed, as well as particular voiceovers to help our film make sense. Throughout the process of production, rolling pictures have conformed and developed many of these quintessential short film disciplines. We also tried to challenge the expected codes as we conform to them. The narrative of our film is quite unusual and provides a big issue for the main character to resolve in a short period of time. The topic of mind games, psychology and mental illness is not usually tackled, and short films tend to have a trivial or humorous storyline. Challenging this convention isn't something we feared, despite first assuming we'd end up making a generic short film. Our film relied heavily on other characters' voices, despite only having one character, and this, again, is not typical of short films. We chose to emphasise the frustration of Wilson's character through hearing the thoughts of others, whereas other films would oppose this and use the main character's thoughts to show her emotions. This decision was made to make the film a little less expected and add interest for the viewer's pleasure. A further code we challenge is the use of a female lead. Finders Keepers uses a female character to portray the protagonist, which is unlike common films, where a male is usually featured in a film of such genre. Female leads are only typically used in rom-coms or light-hearted dramas, therefore the element of psychology and drama was unusual in this production. Also, being an all-female production team, it made sense for us to have a female lead. It's difficult to pigeonhole our film into a specific genre. However, as a production team, we settled on a psychological drama. A psychological drama is an almost sub-genre derived from psychological thriller, and this is what our film falls into. Psychological dramas tend to be highly character-driven, with an emphasis on conflict, where the primary conflict is internal or person versus self. This subgenre usually contains at least mild horror or psychological horror elements, not always but usually, with little or no violence, unlike thrillers, with the emphasis on character relationships and dilemmas. Our short film fits quite neatly into this stereotype as it does include all of these elements. The conventions of film reviews within a magazine are a little more black and white. The elements are far clearer and obvious. We firstly looked at a number of real magazine reviews from publications such as Empire, and this provided us with a template and basis to begin. There are a number of varying layouts magazines use, however, and this is evident in our individual reviews. The first thing that you will notice is the screenshot or image from an actual film, either directly from the film or from the front cover. This usually acts as a header too. However, sometimes the image can be moved around depending on the layout, as previously mentioned. Reviews also include a rating conventionally, and this is a 5-star rating, 5 being the best. Both of these elements are things we included in our review and felt were crucial. As with most written publications, text is columned to give it a neat layout, appearing like a classic newspaper or magazine. This is also another code we included. Although not the most common convention, several magazines include a caption to describe the context of an image within the film, usually making a humorous statement or a pun playing upon the picture. The purpose of this can be merely to interact with the audience, but sometimes it can provide depth and context which will encourage the audience to read the review. With this in mind, we each added our own anecdote overlaying the image. As with all reviews, they must be written in the present tense and almost dish the dirt on the film without revealing too much. In this sense, the writer must tease the reader with enough information to encourage them to view the film themselves. Within our review, this was a priority and something we adhered to. For example, we mentioned the device without going into detail. We felt that challenging the usual conventions of magazine reviews wouldn't benefit us, as it would not look authentic or sound professional, despite developing them.
Finders, keepers. What happens when you find something you're not supposed to? Do you ignore it, or run from it?
Radio trailers have a duration of 60 seconds, and this is the first convention we used. The Finders Keepers trailer follows the typical guidelines as it includes a sound bed, dialogue, which is whispers in our case, from the actual film, a voiceover explaining the film, the release date, rating, and also vox pops, which was an audience reaction. These are the standard codes of radio trailers, and as a production team we used and developed these to make our ancillary product appear as authentic as possible. Using a male voiceover is a very distinct and traditional convention that is used in film trailers, radio trailers, and most other types of advertising. Despite challenging this within our film, we felt that a female voiceover wouldn't give the same effect and professionalism. However, as our film includes a female lead, we didn't want to ignore this entirely, and therefore the vox pops we included were female voices to ensure we had a variety of intonation levels. It also gave us the opportunity to appeal to a wider, non-gender specific audience. We chose to stick fairly rigid to these typical conventions, again to maintain professionalism.